Hi, I'm Addie Kidd with Art Jewelry Magazine. This is our 5-part series on making a bezel. I'm going to show you how to shape your bezel to your stone. So I have my bezel that I've soldered, and it's come back from the pickle. I rinsed it and dried it off. And the solder joint, you can see, is right here. And there's a little bit of a blip there. You know, you can definitely see where it is. So my next step is to make sure that it fits my stone. So fine silver is so soft that I can kind of shape it generally with my fingers and gently push it over the top of my stone. You wouldn't want to do this with every kind of stone. Maybe you might want to use a bezel mandrel, but this is just large enough. I don't have a mandrel that fits it. And it is just an exact fit. I'm going to flip it over and try it that way and push. You want a bezel that is really snug around your stone. You can see there's no edges around that. And I want to make sure that my stone, and I'm being really gentle with this because I don't want to break this little labradorite that I have, that it can push all the way through your bezel, because you're going to be setting it by putting it in from the top down, like that. So it won't help much if your bezel just fits the top and is angled in still. You want it to be perpendicular, fit it either way. So I'll kind of work with it and keep flipping it around. And then anytime I see a part that's bumped out, kind of like these two, I push it against the stone just gently. And I'm just pushing this against my level bench block here. And perhaps rock the stone along any of those rough edges until you got a nice smooth bezel. And at this point you might need to anneal it. It might get work hardened just enough that you need to anneal it to get it exactly right. And you want this to be exactly right, because by the time you solder it down, it's set in whatever shape you put it. The next step then is going to be to get rid of this solder seam. And I put my solder on the outside because I find it easier to get it off. So I'm going to use a nice fine file, and I'm using a half round, but I'm just using the flat side of it. And I've got my finger braced underneath the solder seam, and I'm just going to lightly file until I can't see the lines of delineation of where the solder starts and stops. And you're going to take a little bit of your bezel with you. I'm going to turn it around so I can get it from the other angle. And if you need to, kind of make sure it's very rounded over your finger so that you're not taking any more away than you need to. You're just getting the top part of the solder. You just want to make this nice and flush so nobody can tell where you soldered it, or at least the untrained eye can't tell where you soldered it. And you'll be able to tell there's just a color difference. It'll all be the same level of shininess. You won't see any lines or anything. And then I'm going to grab my sanding stick. I have a really light sandpaper here, pretty high grit. I don't want to rough this up very much. I want to smooth it out. So you could do a 600 grit, 400 even if it was a pretty big solder seam there. And that pretty well takes care of that. I'm going to check my fit again. We probably contorted it a bit with the sanding. Push it through. And the next step will be sanding the bottom smooth. And I just have another bench block here that I've taped some rough sandpaper to. And you're going to hold the bottom part, whatever the bottom part is of your bezel. And if there's a specific side to it, like a lot of stones aren't exactly symmetrical, if there's a specific side to it, be sure to mark that with a permanent marker or something so you know what the top or the front or the back is, because it'll all look the same to you after a while. And so I lightly press down and make like a figure 8 against the sandpaper. Make sure it's on a nice flat surface so you get the benefit of that. And this is going to both clean the silver and rough it up to a nice flat spot so you'll have a full contact for soldering. I'm going to check that and make sure that it's rough along the entire edge. You can kind of see there's a different texture if the sandpaper hasn't hit it. And so I'm going to keep going back, kind of flipping it around because your fingers are going to have different pressures on it. And this nice figure 8 motion until when I look at it, there's a uniform texture along the bottom. And now this is always going to be my bottom. Check that fit again. You're always checking fit with stones.